For many children in urban low-income areas, the foreign language classroom may be one of the only places where they get exposure to different cultures and perspectives. It is therefore critical that we make those experiences attainable, relatable, and sustainable. I have been speaking and studying or living in Spanish in some way since the age of 9. I took the classes, I got the degree, I worked in Latin America, I even taught Spanish in the classroom. And it is the combination of these experiences that have brought me to coin the phrase language swag, one's unique ability to embody the languages that we speak. There was one event in particular that brought me to this concept of language swag and brings me, La Fabulosa PhD, one who flows freely through the languages of English, Spanish, and hip hop, to you today. In 2001, I was to take my first trip to South America. I was working in relief and development. It was a job that I had gotten right after grad school because they were looking for someone who was bilingual. I was to go to Colombia and talk about the desplazados and desaparecidos, the displaced and the disappeared. I was briefed thoroughly, so I thought I was ready. I arrived in Bogota, and when those doors opened, I knew immediately there was something I was not prepared for. On the other side of those big, beautiful double doors was a room full of black people, Afro-Colombianos. It shook my whole world. I studied Spanish at a highly acclaimed historically black college. I took Afro-Hispanic literature. At that moment, I had been speaking Spanish for about 15 years of my life. I never made the connection, and the connection was never shown to me, that there were people who looked like me who were living the very language I had immersed myself in. When those doors opened in Bogota, I saw Spanish in a whole new way, as a means of connecting to the African diaspora that I had never even conceived of. You see, when I started taking Spanish in the 6th grade, the idea of traveling overseas was mentioned but not really stressed. I don't think my teachers ever expected me to visit a Spanish-speaking country. But why was that? Well, I was that urban black girl who was getting her culture from the foreign language classroom. So the odds were against me that I would excel beyond what was expected of me in the foreign language classroom. Let's look at this statistic. The number of African Americans who major in or get a degree in foreign language nationwide, 4%. Based off of this statistic, there was no expectation I was going to do anything beyond what was required of me in the classroom. But I'm more than a statistic. And that's true for many black students, not just me. How many Camis have sat at the desk of their foreign language classroom and been overlooked, undercounted, and mislabeled because of this statistic? What would it look like to show them what to expect on the other side of those beautiful double doors? What would it look like to show them themselves in Spanish? Dr. Zena Moore recommended in 2005 that we find creative and inventive ways to be able to show black students how to appreciate their cultural richness in the classroom. I argue the same holds true in the foreign language classroom, teaching cultural accuracy with as much rigor as the grammar. But what does that look like? Well, first, we've got to make the language attainable. Many times, black students go into their classroom, they're shamed for using their language swag, that home voice, that neighborhood voice in the classroom. In the foreign language classroom, all students are taught that the way that the teacher speaks is the correct and only way to speak the language. Both of these statements are incorrect. The soul of the black experience is embedded in everything that we do, and language is not excluded from that. That's really all language swag is. How we use language to color our speech, our rhythm, and our souls. When we teach black students how to appreciate the language learning process by using their language swag, they start to see language as being a part of them. There's been research about black students in the English classroom. For example, April Baker Bell talks about persecution, dehumanization, and marginalization of black students who use their language swag in the classroom. In 1996, Renowned Black linguist and scholar Dr. Geneva Smitherman said, "We have kids in the inner cities who are verbal geniuses, but we call them deficient in school and attempt to eradicate a part of their identity." Both of these statements apply to the foreign language classroom because in both places we're talking about teaching the use of language. The formal Spanish that we learn in the classroom usually only comes from one country, but it does not represent the diversity of the people and language that Blacks experience. There are 26 countries that speak Spanish, one in Africa. We need both the neighborhood Spanish and the classroom Spanish in order to be able to code switch, just like Blacks code switch in English. Our Spanish interactions should mirror our English language interactions. This brings us to making language relatable. Many times, there's an assumption that the carefully placed non-threatening images of famous Black people in the classrooms and schools is enough for Black students to feel represented in the classroom. This assumption is shallow and actually exacerbates issues of white supremacy in the education system. By showing Black students how to identify similar racial and linguistic features in course content, they're able to see that perceived authenticity of language, that language swag. When those doors opened in Colombia, my Spanish shifted because there were people on the other side that looked like me. I began to speak Spanish in my culture from my own language swag, and we connected based on shared experiences of language, family, and culture. For example, there are phrases that we use that are common in our country that have a Black history to them with similar connections in Spanish-speaking countries. You might hear in a Palenque neighborhood, "no lo haga pa nada," and that has the same connotation as "you better not do that," or "you better not," or "you bet not" in the Black communities. No. It's not grammatically accurate. It is culturally accurate, and that is just as important. This moves us to making language sustainable. Our language amplifies our identities. By centering the experiences of Black students in the foreign language classroom, it drives them to be able to start using the language. It makes them see that language is a part of them. Prior to going to Colombia, I was a good Spanish student. I got all the A's. I even won second place in a Spanish-speaking contest for native speakers. But that's a story for another time. But I tell people all the time, it was my experiences in Colombia when I started to live in Spanish. About a year after that trip, I left Relief and Development, and I started teaching Spanish in an urban Maryland school. I spent every day recreating my Spanish double doors moment for my students because I wanted them to see sooner than I did that Spanish was attainable, relatable, and sustainable. The stakes are high in urban areas. Yes, from Dayton to Hong Kong, students will get exposure to other cultures, but our lower income students will not be able to travel as frequently as our more affluent peers. So we've got to make sure that the foreign language classroom really gets it right for them. Education systems have to look at the Spanish curriculum by including Afro-Latino culture as vital to the language learning process. For teacher education, foreign language teachers need to get that cultural awareness, but a little bit deeper, so they're not just learning how to teach, but learning the value present in who they teach. By teaching Black students to be able to speak a language in a way that centers their established language swag, we are allowing them the ability to be able to take that language into their souls. And it's that allows them to take that language from the classroom to their professional and their personal lives. Mil gracias.